Hey, what's up, YouTube? We're back with another Helldivers video here. This one will be mostly focusing on a new format of tier list. This one will be more focused on the assault rifle class. So we're going to be starting off with the regular Liberator. The regular Liberator is your baseline Helldivers weapon. With the Liberator, you're going to be looking at like a solid B rating, basically across the board for all of the factions. It's probably going to be at its lowest point for the bots, although not bad versus bots. Light pen in general just tends to not be as useful. That's not to say that you can't use light pen, just light pen has a harder time existing. So just in general, I would say, you know, grabbing a sight picture that is good for you. I tend to aim towards the lower magnifications just so I get better handling. But if you're maybe going for bots, you know, you're obviously going to go for like a higher magnification. As far as my attachments, vertical foregrip usually just is the best. I don't think the extra vertical recoil that you're going to get from an angled foregrip is really worth it. I typically don't really need the laser sight and stuff like that. So just grabbing a vertical foregrip and then maybe the flashlight for dark maps is particularly great. Flashlighter, fantastic all-around option for reducing your vertical and horizontal. Works very well on the Liberator just because it doesn't have that much vertical recoil. So I don't feel like I need the compensator nearly as much. And the muzzle brake doesn't feel very noticeable, but just because it doesn't have that much horizontal. So flashlighter just kind of bog standard in the middle. Drum magazine is fantastic on this thing. Obviously I would have it here, but didn't quite finish leveling it up for this video, but obviously drum mag would be the best. Short mag I think has its moments, but for automatic weapons I tend to just say go for the largest magazine possible within reason when we're talking about ergonomics. Next, going into its slightly bigger brother, or at least larger caliber for armor piercing, you have the Liberator Penetrator. It's just an extremely low recoil version of the base Liberator. Absolutely love this thing on all fronts. It does have less damage, but it makes up for it for doing more damage versus light armor. On top of that, giving you utility to shoot medium armor in general. Great weapon, very accurate across the board, and it doesn't really require you to put too many attachments on it. I would rate this easily in the A to A plus tier on every single faction. Bugs in particular, it feels very nice. On bots, it feels like closer to A plus, just because that medium pen is extremely useful. And then on Illuminate, it's honestly maybe even touching S tier at times because of how universal it feels and how stable it is at like shooting the heads of Illuminate overseers. Aim at their heads, they will die within about 3 shots to the head. You can take out harvesters if you shoot them in the arm, kind of where Luna's laying on me. Highly recommend. As far as attachments, as you can see here, I have the flash hider, I have the vertical foregrip, and then I have the drum mag. Moving on to the next, we have the Liberator Concussive. Liberator Concussive is a somewhat underrated weapon. I think a lot of people kind of sleep on how good the CC effect on it is. It knocks back enemies and gives you a lot of breathing room against enemies, and all it really requires is usually just 1 shot. Very solid weapon for just team support or just protecting turrets in general. I find with the turret loadout, it works really well because you probably all seen like a rocket sender just stop firing if enemies get too close to it. This weapon allows you to keep them more at distance, so it actually gains a lot. Obviously, the damage per second is not particularly too great on this. Light pen, only 65 damage and a slower fire rate than the majority of them, but it allows you to just give yourself that space. And then if you start pairing it with other stratagems, you can actually like still get a lot of killing potential out of this. So if you're using a guard dog or sentries, this thing pairs really well with it. As far as factions, I find that I particularly enjoyed it mostly on bugs. This thing is extremely good on predator terrain, even versus predators, although it has low damage. When you're knocking back that enemy, you can start shooting them in the mouth. Very strong at that. On bots, I didn't find this nearly as useful because there just isn't that many bots out there that you're going to be pushing back other than berserkers, because nothing really is rushing you down that you can really deal with. On the Illuminate faction, it is nice to be able to stun lock elevated overseers or, you know, just overseers in general, but they're the only ones that have that, and I feel like I would rather have the increased damage of another Liberator or just the higher pen of another Liberator. So as far as rankings go, I want to say this is like closer to B plus on bugs. I think it's definitely one of those underrated weapons that people are not really paying attention to, but I do think it is worth a try. On bots, it's probably like closer to a B minus. I don't see many people using it, and when I use it, I typically just feel like I would much rather use another light pen weapon. I don't find the stagger nearly as useful in that faction. And then, as I said, with the Illuminate, it's somewhere in between. It's very nice for your overseers, but yeah, that's about where it ends. All right, going to the STA-52. This is a weapon that not a a lot of people are going to have because we still do not know when the kill zone weapons are going to come back. I'll be short and brief on this one. Overall, it is basically a normal Liberator, but with a slightly different coat of paint and a slightly different magazine layout. As you can see, it has a slightly faster fire rate and a slightly bigger magazine, but it comes with the big trade-offs of no attachments, and its sight picture is terrible. It is extremely hard to use if you want to be using it on the bot front and be more accurate with it. I can't recommend it. As far as recoil, it is on the higher side, but it's not too bad after like maybe the first like 15 or 20 shots. It does get pretty stable. As far as my rankings on it though, I think it's a low B minus at this point. Unless it gets attachments and stuff like that, I can't see myself recommending it to people. At worst, it's probably like a C on like bots. On Illuminate, it's probably like a C plus at best. We just have better options at this point because of the attachment system. The recoil is not too bad, especially those close ranges versus bugs, and light pen typically works best on bugs. So it's probably its best overall faction. Okay, next we go with the Pacifier. This one received some minor changes since the last time we talked about it. They've been overall tuning the status effects of the game, and the stun on it has been changed for the negative and the positive. It is harder to build up the stun in multiplayer, but the stun lasts longer now. The bug previously was that if you were playing a multiplayer, for every additional person other than yourself, it was applying the stun of it an additional time. Now they have brought that back to kind of like somewhere in the middle where it does take more shots to stun the enemy, but when they do get stunned, they get stunned for a little bit longer, which is cool. I like that, but there's a lot of like feedback right now on Reddit and Discord and stuff like that the devs need to probably look at these status effects a little bit more because it's taking too long to apply a lot of them. So unfortunately, I think the Pacifier, even in my own ratings, has gone down because of that. It's just taking too long to stun things. So the Pacifier is probably dropping from like that A minus tier rating that I really enjoyed to maybe more of a B tier, B plus. It's somewhat similar to Liberator Concussive. It is nice that it has medium pen though, and it has like a relatively nice fire rate, so it's not too long to stun something. On the bug front, I'd probably give it A minus, B plus on the A minus side, just because it has at least that medium pen, so it's not as annoying to deal with, like, you know, hive guards, and it does do that bonus damage against any of the light armor, and you can deal with the occasional battle spewer if they show up. On the bot front, I did not like the stun nearly as much, and on top of that, I felt like the damage on it was a bit too low, so, you know, definitely like closer to like the B tier on average probably right now. And then Illuminate, I think it's B plus. I really enjoy being able to stun lock a elevated overseer, although it takes longer to do right now. It feels really good. You will only be stunning a flesh mob for the first couple shots before you break an eye, and then when they get enraged, you cannot stun lock them, which is unfortunate. And killing a harvester with this weapon does take a lot of shots because of the lower damage, but it is possible. You can definitely go out of your way to kill a harvester, which keeps it in the higher Bs in my opinion. Liberator Carbine has seen a massive glow up since we last talked about it. With the attachments, it feels like a minor stalwart, really fast fire rate. Love using this thing. The attachments with the drum mag and then the vertical foregrip feel really good. As you can see on screen here, I have the vertical foregrip, I have the compensator, and then I have the 1.5x tube. By far, I love that sight picture just because it's the normal ergonomics of even just a red dot, but you get 1.5x magnification, which is really nice. Liberator Carbine just feels so nice. Highly recommend giving it a try if you have not used it in a while. Feels really good versus bugs. I'd say like easy A minus to A tier, depending on how you feel about just like high fire rate in general. You can mag dump a brute commander before it even gets close to you, take it off that head and just like running backwards, or just like continue putting more rounds into it and drop it faster. Just like small bursts for the occasional like hunter, can drop them very easily. Stalkers are going to hate you, especially if you're going for mouth shots. You can drop them very fast. It's great. The amount of damage per second this thing pushes out is amazing. Just obviously medium pen not being there does definitely affect its performance on the bot front in particular. I did not like it nearly as much on the bot front just because you're typically going for more weak spot hits and that fire rate doesn't really matter as much. You can go for burst fire, but at that point I feel like I'd rather just have a Tenderizer in my hand rather than the Lib Carbine. So for bugs, I'm probably saying A-A. For bots, it's probably somewhere in the B to B plus range. There's even times where I'm just like, I'd rather have just the normal Liberator, just because for better recoil, like you can even get better recoil values at that point. But that being said, it's not like a bad weapon on bots. You just have to tap fire more often. But it is nice when a berserker runs you down. You can drop them quite quickly. And then on Illuminate, it goes back to A-. It's not going to be any higher on Illuminate just because it doesn't have the medium pen to drop overseers as easily. They did recently change their chests. So if you shoot at their chest, you can break that armor and then destroy their chests, like killing them pretty quickly. But you're not dealing with a harvester, and it doesn't have a ton of range on it. So if you're trying to deal with a longer range overseer, it is a bit difficult. Going into the Tenderizer, this one is an absolute fan favorite. People love this thing. If you are okay with light pen, this thing is awesome because it at time feels like a little bit of a DMR mixed with an assault rifle. It is that nice in between. It has fire rate options as well. You can increase the fire rate to, I believe it was 850 RPM, which is fantastic. Very low recoil at base. You put like what I have here, you have like a vertical foregrip on it with like a decent scope, and you are tapping heads with this thing. It is awesome. Very fun. Now its drawback is the smaller magazine. Unfortunately, it doesn't even have the standard 45 round. It has just the 35. It did not receive as many attachments as the other weapons, and maybe in the future it might get the drum mag or extended mag, but at the moment it doesn't. So overall on the bug front, I'm giving it like somewhere in the A- range just because the smaller magazine does matter. Although it does more damage per shot, the larger magazine of 60 rounds does make a big difference for this class of weapon. On the bot front, A-. Although it doesn't have medium pen, like I was saying earlier, it does tap heads relatively well. 2 shots to a Devastator's eye is quite easy with this thing. You can put it in burst fire and it works really well for doing that job. Highly recommend giving it a try. And then on Illuminate, it's somewhere in the A- range. I think it could be easily A, depending on how accurate you are. And you're obviously not dealing with any harvesters, really. Like you could shoot the eye with this thing because it is fairly accurate, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. I'd probably have a different weapon to deal with those guys. Okay, and going into the last of our like traditional assault rifles, we have the Adjudicator. The Adjudicator is essentially an alternative to the normal Liberator Penetrator. I really enjoy the Adjudicator. Slower fire rate, but a larger caliber, so you're doing more damage per shot. But it does, come with the drawback of smaller magazine and more recoil. But if you tend to like weapons in more of like a burst function or like somewhere in between a marksman rifle and an assault rifle, this might be the weapon for you. This weapon didn't receive that many attachments, but it still felt quite nice to use against all factions, and I highly recommend it. It will get a slightly lower rating on a lot of like the horde oriented fronts, like for the Illuminant or for the bugs, just because of the smaller magazine. But for bots, I really enjoy this thing just because it packs so much of a punch per individual shot compared to Liberator Carbine, which will take more rounds. So on the bug front, I'm probably going to give this thing like an A- in general, or an A tier, depending on how accurate you are. For the bot front, I highly recommend this thing. It is extremely fun to use. And remember, you don't need to go for eye shots with medium pen weapons in particular. Adjudicator, I'd say A tier. On bots, highly recommend this thing. It feels good. And then for Illuminant, it depends more on accuracy. Like if you're good at like double tapping overseer heads, you will absolutely adore this thing, but you may have trouble shooting at like mid-range just because of the extra recoil that it has versus the Liberator Penetrator. I put the flash hider on this in crouch, and I find it works perfectly fine for me, but maybe you want to put the compensator with a larger scope so you can kind of get those mid-range duels a little bit easier. But I think the Illuminant rating would probably be an A+ tier. Not as high as the Liberator Carbine just because it doesn't perform as well versus voteless. That being said, our last weapon that we're going to be rating today that I do feel like fits into the assault rifle category that is brand new is the Variable. If you watched our previous video, I absolutely love this thing. It does handle like a bit of a boat, and it doesn't really have interesting attachments yet. Hopefully we get some more in the future, but I do really like this thing. It has just so much versatility as far as fire rates. You get 3 different fire rate modes. You get 3 different fire modes. So if I'm playing against bugs, I tend to put it in volley fire and then the mid-range or the higher rate fire rate. If I'm playing against bots, I typically have it in the auto rifle mode, but maybe I turn down the fire rate so it's a little more accurate. If I'm fighting a impaler, I'll put this thing in total and it can one-shot it if you put it in the total fire mode. Also pretty good for taking out bile titans if you shoot them in the stomach. 2 shots with the total mode. It's just very strong, and I highly recommend recommend it, especially if people that you really enjoy the teleport backpack. It's so much fun to just teleport behind an enemy, turn around and shoot a total round all in the radiator of a Hulk. Extremely satisfying. Some of the most fun gameplay I've had in Helldivers in a long time. So highly recommend the variable. Love this thing. As far as ratings, I do think the ergonomics hurts it for the bug side faction. So if they don't touch the ergonomics, it's probably closer to an A-. It has so much versatility on the front though. And if you don't mind bringing peak physique, it's probably a higher rating just because of how great it is at dealing with like a wide variety of enemies. 2 volley shots on a Brood Commander, Alpha Brood Commander's head, which is really nice. You can one tap normal nursing spewers with the volley shot, which is really cool as well. It's just really fun to use, and it actually does perform quite well on that faction. If you hate impalers, this thing is awesome. On the bot front, I don't think it performed as well. It's probably like a B+. It does not have as many problems with overall like handling, just because that faction is a lot slower, but you will definitely miss the fact that it doesn't have medium pen, and the fact that it will struggle at times if you're not just shooting at the back of a Hulk and stuff like that, and if you don't pair it with like certain stratagems to really capitalize on that. B+, A-. Like I don't think A- would be too forgiving for that kind of rating. It does do quite well if you have a very accurate hand versus Devastators, so I think it is fair to maybe put it there. And then versus Illuminant, I do really like using this thing. It technically can one tap a Harvester in the blue eye that it has. Now, admittedly, it took me quite a few tries to get it to work. It's a little bit hard to do, but you can make it work. It does do fairly well against flesh mobs just because you can mag dump them so fast and effectively. So the damage per second of this gun is actually insane. So flesh mobs actually get dropped pretty easily. As far as the Overseers though, I didn't find volley mode to work that effectively for me personally. So I tended to just put it in auto and then like just try and go for chest shots the best I can. And it worked pretty well. I would probably give it like a B+ on the Illuminate front. It doesn't have nearly as cool things going on, and the ergonomics does hurt it. If it gets better attachments in the future to improve ergonomics, that would be interesting though. So that's all of the weapons that I would classify as assault rifles at the moment. Let me know what you guys think of this new format. Next one, if you guys enjoy it, will probably be the designated marksman rifles. So let me know down below if you guys would like to see that in this format. Thank you so much for watching. Leave comments down below on what you guys think of the assault rifle class. Are you happy overall with how assault rifles are forming now? Personally, I think they're a lot better and a much better place as they once were. They might be a little bit low on ammo, but I think they're good now. Consider leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel for more content. Have a great one. Much love. Bye, YouTube.